probably the first time in my life, my dad sat me down and he went, and a couple of my members of my family had been lifed off, and he was like, we're just going to end up like them. I can just see it in you. You're going to do something really bad to somebody. You know, I dug out an old set of darts and I hit a 180 and won my game, and I thought, oh, I quite like this. So I'm sort of backstage and there was this big fella there and he goes, oh, I'm going to be world champion. I said, yeah, of course you are, mate. Yeah, of course you are. It was Bremen van Barneveld. And I was like, yeah, of course you are, mate. Like, even as good as Eric and Lowy and Keith and Jockey, and I can do that. There was one exception to the rule, Phil. I was like, I can't do that. From the outside, I had the perfect life. But internally, I was a mess. Depression, like, beyond, to a degree that unless I was absolutely close to being out of my brains, I couldn't leave the safety of a hotel room or my house.
What was that first night in prison like?
There was a riot and they set fire to the jail and I was locked in my cell. You know, I was like, I just might as well kill myself because everybody's going to believe all this that was in the newspapers, and where do I go? What's the point?
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Dart Show. I'm delighted to say I am joined by former player, now pundit, and many things besides. Mace the Ace, Chris Mason. Thanks for coming to talk to us, Chris.
Pleasure.
We will discuss everything. You cool with that?
Well, nearly everything. We got a bit.
Yeah, okay. Well, almost everything. But we're going to start right back at the beginning. What did your early life look like?
My father's best friend, Roger Pullen, he was a England selector and heavily involved in darts, used to be involved with all the pros of the mid to late 70s. So growing up as a kid, my dad used to drive Roger around and the players around and was friends of the players and a County A player himself, as was my mother, as was my brother and sister. So coming home from school, you could find Eric in my living room practicing for an exhibition that night, or Alan, or Leighton, or Cliff, or John, or Bob Anderson, Mike Gregory. The list was endless. So it was just normal for me to see the people that they were watching on television at the time. Well, not quite on television then, apart from the News of the World and possibly the Masters. So yeah, I just grew up in that environment, but I also grew up in an environment where it was almost expected that me and my brother would probably go into boxing or something like that rather than darts, and we both did. My brother boxed in the ABAs, and I was heavily involved in boxing, but darts seemed very normal. My earliest memories of playing would be at Bedminster Down, where that was the West of England or Avon's county home venue, and I was that little kid that had a chair up at the board that was stood in between Leighton, Bob Anderson, and all the other players, and probably a bit of a pain in the backside.
No.
Yeah. And just literally, I was obsessed with it. I wasn't academically very clever. I had dyslexia, and I just found that whole schoolroom environment quite troubling. But maths, I was fascinated by the numbers on a dartboard, and that was it.
Am I right in thinking that even as a baby, you'd be like stuck on the bar in the pub while your mum and dad were playing? They'd stick you in like a box or a hat box.
Hat box, yeah. Paddy and Ken owned the Fish Ponds Tavern, and I had the straightest hair going. She used to call me Curly. I think that might have been a thing back then that people did. And as a baby, I would be plonked in a hat box while my parents played darts. But the pubs obviously were. No wonder I ended up a smoker. I was probably on 40 a day then, just by breathing in.
Well, you said that it was boxing that was your passion, you and your brother. I mean, darts, it was normal, and a lot of darts fans would look at your early life there and go, that's amazing. You're Leighton Rees and all these people just around all the time, Eric Bristow. But you weren't that committed to it, were you? It was something that was there.
Yeah, it was just like a normal thing. You know, it was just a game I played. It wasn't. There was no. I played in youth tournaments, but there was none of this. You see it with kids now that are talented at football or rugby or athletics. Their life's pretty much mapped out. I think both my parents knew I was a little bit bonkers, so they probably didn't want to map my life out too heavily. And then by the time I was 16, I quit. I just felt I went back into boxing, and fitness and all that kind of thing. And by the time I was 18, I was working doors.
Well, because you were expelled from school, what, 15?
15, yeah.
And then within a couple of years, you sort of labouring, working on the doors around Bristol.
Yeah, my life started just. Yeah, I think getting expelled was the start of the end, if you know what I mean, of that sort of. I feel like I've lived different lives, even when I look back now, or something randomly comes up on YouTube and it's a match that I was involved in, I have to watch it to try and get some kind of recollection, because it's almost so my childhood feels like a blur. And I think it wasn't traumatic as in anything happened to me, and I totally understand how that works, but I don't have any recall of it, because it was, I was in and out of trouble all the time, and getting expelled was, you would have thought, right, well, that was the trigger, the knee jerk to get help, and of course back then dyslexia, mental health wasn't a thing. People would be, they used to go, you'll end up in the funny farm or something like that, of thing. And especially for boys, and it just wasn't a thing, especially from my upbringing and my background. And so 15, got expelled, got a job, started labouring, got a job on the doors.
What's working on the doors as a teenager like in Bristol back then? Was it rough?
Horrific, like literally horrific. I was at 17, you're still a boy. I know this is typical Mason contradiction. I go on about, Luke Humphries winning the World Youth Championship with a beard, but I was most definitely still a child, but I loved fighting and I could fight, and that's the only criteria you have to feel to be a door. Now it's totally different. You actually got the test you had if you wanted to work the door was. Yeah, the
guys who work here, they all work on the doors in various places, but they've got various badges and security and training, all that. But back then, that's like you look like you can handle yourself.
Yeah, can you fight? Yeah. Well, that's how I got my brother was DJing in a nightclub, and they had a big problem with a group of lads outside, and they were pretty heavily outnumbered. And the guy who ran the door back then said, "Look, could you?" And we were like, "Oh yeah," and we it all got dealt with. And afterwards, we went back in the club, and he went, "Oh, do you want a job?" And I was getting £25 a day labour on the building site, and I got 35 quid a night for working the door Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night.
So at that point, I mean, I can imagine that a young lad in Bristol who is not got any idea where he's going in life.
No.
He's finally getting a few quid in his pocket, and he's out every night, probably drinking. Or didn't really. You didn't. I would literally finish work, go to the gym, shower at the gym, have my work clothes, and then go straight to the club. And then that was basically that cycle.
That was a cycle, but that was good for me because it was regimented. It was discipline. It was. I knew, and I'm probably everybody. Well, not everybody, but most people who suffer with poor mental health, you need that routine.
So we're going to talk, I would imagine, in depth about mental health issues. But when did darts come back into your life then?
So we used to go to Bath once a month, the team of doormen, when we had a night off. It was Sunday, and there used to be a club that opened on a Sunday, and I was about nearly 21. And everybody used to take it in turn to drive, and we'd just go out and let our hair down, and the lads would have a few beers, and it was just nice to be the other side of the fence sort of thing. And we ended up in a massive fight, And I ended up getting nicked, and I was held on remand 6 weeks, and it was horrendous. And in the process, I broken my left hand, so I couldn't train. Obviously, I couldn't do anything for those 6 weeks because I was at Her Majesty's pleasure. And probably the first time in my life, my dad sat me down and he went, and a couple of my members of my family had been lifed off, and he was like, "We're just going to end up like them." He said, I can just see it in you. You're gonna do something really bad to somebody.
What was that like, that conversation? It's evidently stuck with you.
Yeah, my dad my dad was a disciplinarian, but wasn't strict. And he wasn't a smart man. He just worked. He would work 2 jobs if he had to. He just work. That was his mindset, and didn't like drama, didn't like trouble, but never really gave me any sort of life guidance or ever sat me down and said, like, what do you want to do? So anyway, I eventually it went to court, and then I was let out and still had obviously a broken hand. And my dad said, "Look, we got darts Friday and we're a man short. Do you fancy coming?" I went, "No, Dad, I'm not interested. I don't want to be in that environment." And he eventually talked me around to it, and I turned up, and all the lads that I sort of played darts with as a kid, Neil Selleck and them kind of people, they sort of welcomed me back with open arms. And when you spend just a couple of years working on the doors, it's quite although you always work with somebody, it's quite a weird environment where
it's constant aggro, isn't it?
Yeah,
you're constantly on edge.
That never leaves you. You know, a lot of the lads who work for our security are ex-military, and I spend a lot of time with them, and they never switch off. They're constantly. And when we do the Worlds, we have those lads that go around and check for anything, a bag that's left. You know, even when you just briefly go, "Hi mate, how you doing? Do you have a nice Christmas?" Blah blah blah. They're like
meerkatting about. They don't switch off, do they?
No,
but
and you tend not to. And it was just nice to go back to a normal environment. And as it was, I dug out an old set of darts and I hit a 180 and won my game. And I thought, I quite like this.
So was it, because presumably you'd put in a bit of effort to get on the board in the intervening time, and so that was your target. You needed a target.
I think that's how I've lived my life, really. If you say no, and that's a good and a bad thing. But yeah, that was pretty much it. And then I started playing, and I won that tournament as well. So that was like 500 quid, and I thought, 500 quid for that. So then I just started going every weekend in Wales. There was like a 300 quidder or a 500 quidder. And I started playing in all of those and winning lots and lots and lots of them at that level. And then I got up a pub at the Raglan where I was playing darts. Landlord in there. And but now this time I'm roofing. Worst job in the world. With a guy called Mike Johnson, and he was a great dart player himself. Still's a great friend to this day. And we got in this conversation about going to Belgium, the Belgium Open, and we had a Mark 1 Escort estate, no money, and it was right by an well, we didn't know it was an airport, but we drove there on the Friday. It was in Liège in Belgium. We drove there on the Friday. Got close to the venue, got drunk, didn't have an hotel, we were sleeping in the back of this estate, didn't get drunk, we got absolutely trolleyed Belgian beer, wow. And and that was it. Woke up in the morning, drove to the venue, as you did back then, and I got to the semi-finals and had a couple of darts to beat Mike Gregory, who was regarded as one of the best players in the world at the time.
Was that the first time he'd even been abroad at this point?
Yeah, I'd never been anywhere, ever.
So you drove to Belgium.
Yeah, and I drove.
Got annihilated, slept in the back of a car,
Yeah.
and then very nearly beat one of the very best players on the planet in your first sort of foreign tournament.
This was a great story as well, because over there, you play in a tournament over here. Oh, you've lost, right? Here's your money. Off you trot. So they do this. They do this big thing over there where they do like this big presentation for the flowers and trophies for the semi-finalists.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sort of backstage, and there was this big fella there, and his English was okay, wasn't great. So I was having what, mate? And he goes, "Oh, I'm going to be world champion." I said, "Yeah, of course you are, mate. Yeah, of course you are." It was Bremen van Barneveld. And I was like, "Yeah, of course you are, mate. Yeah." And of course, lo and behold, he went on to win a few of them. And then that sort of put me close, ranking wise, with other little tournaments I'd been to in England. I had a chance to qualify direct for the embassy, which it was then, the Lakeside as it's now known.
Was that even a realistic target when you thought, let's go to Belgium?
No,
we just gone there for a laugh, hadn't you?
Yeah, some bloke was paying for it. Me and my mate were going on a jolly up. And my mate had worked in Germany on the roofs over there for years, so he was quite familiar with European sort of life. And yeah, then I went to the England Open. I think I lost in the quarters. I beat Andy Fordham en route, qualified for the embassy, and drew Andy Fordham first round. This was typically me. I was there was no podcasting then. It was like an interview for a newspaper, and they said, "Oh, you're on debut, drew Andy Fordham." I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm not worried about it." I said, "I played him in the England Open and beat him easy." I said, "It's a good draw for me." And I didn't know Andy was literally. It was done in like like the old American diner type booth.
Oh yeah, little booth.
Yeah, he was in the booth next door, chuckling away.
How did you not notice Andy Fordham in a booth next to you?
I know exactly. So, and when I got to Lakeside, we were first game on in the afternoon, I think. So I was in there for about 10 o'clock. Andy was in there, and he's just drinking. I'm on the dartboard, like a bantam, puffing my chest out and that, loving life, thinking I'm a superstar. And he'd have another beer, and another beer, and another beer, and another beer, and another beer. Got me another throw. I'm thinking, oh, he's nervous. He's not even throwing darts. He knows he's getting beat.
The word you're looking for is thirsty, mate.
Yeah. So we're about 20-odd bottles in now, and apart from the fact that I was absolutely fascinated by someone could drink that much alcohol, he'd not been for a pee. I thought, what is going on here? So Sam Hawkins, who was the players' marshal type thing back then, he come in, he said, "Right, lads, about 30 minutes maybe, and probably about 20 minutes till walk-ons and that." So Big Andy gets up, and he was a mountain of a man, wasn't he? Goes up to the bar, and of course he'd been there before, so they knew the score, and large brandy. Brings his darts up, goes for a pee, comes back, drinks the brandy, has 10 minutes practice, and I win one leg. And he was absolutely brilliant. Afterwards, I was absolutely devastated and embarrassed. And he come and sat down, he put his arm around me, he went, "Oh, I listened to your interview. By the way, it was all the inspiration I needed." And then, ironically, we played a couple of years later, and a lot of people go on about different games I played at the embassy, but the one where I beat him en route to the semi-finals, the second time, I regard as one of my best ever games. But the year he won it, I took him down to the Chinese. It used to be a Chinese takeaway just down in town, just about a 5-minute drive from Lakeside. And the Chinese guy was in, "Oh, Big Andy. Obviously, they recognised him. And he went, "Oh, we just have Merv King in." And he go, "Oh, yeah, he say he win final. Oh, and I'm looking at that thinking, "Oh, this deja vu. This is deja vu," because he was playing Merv in the final, of course. And we had a right laugh and a joke. I picked up our takeaway, I took him back to the hotel and that. And we were having a right laugh and joke about it.
How big is an Andy Fordham takeaway?
Yeah, it was substantial. It was over £20 back then.
That's a lot of money back then.
That's a lot of money back then. You could buy a nice car back then. But no, he actually wasn't. He wasn't a massive eater, Andy. He just loved the beer. But yeah, so, and that was pretty much the beginning. And
well, look, you've mentioned there a couple of times. You weren't shy about publicly backing yourself, talking yourself up in any situation. But you said you used the word devastating. What was that feeling like of getting up on the Embassy stage as it was then, only winning one leg? Yes, I know it's against Andy Fordham, but that's a guy who just said you were going to smash up. Yeah, good draw for me.
And a guy I'd already beaten.
Yeah.
But I'd never been on under the lights on a stage. And well, I had. Actually, no, yeah, I had. My first match on television was against Roland Sholton in the... What's it called? The MF? No, I can't remember what it was called. European Championships. I think Peter Manley made the final. He played Mike Gregory in the final. That was my actual debut on TV.
That go well?
No. And this hurt more. Not the defeat or the manner of the defeat. My mum had a bizarre way of being with me. And I never felt like they were proud. Well, I never did anything for them to be proud of me. But I thought, I was trying to turn my life around, and I'd qualified for this European Championship thing at Lakeside. And when I come off, she said, oh, that's what happens when you play with the big boys. And that broke my heart. That lived with me. I resented my mother for years for that. That and still hurts me today. And she's passed away, God bless her. And I loved my mum. I was a mummy's boy, but she was brutal, and that really hurt. That like devastated me, because I thought, that's horrible, like horrible thing to say to somebody. It was my debut on TV, and it just literally, even when I think about it now, it's like a punch in the stomach.
Because I'm guessing by that point as well, darts. You're making some money from darts, more money than you make on the doors and the labour. And you say, I'm trying to sort my life out here. And darts is obviously, it's a massive part of your mum and dad's life. It was a massive, massive thing. Do you feel that you're obviously doing it for yourself, but do you think you were doing it to sort of show you folks, like, I can make something of myself here?
Yeah, I think we all do that, don't we? In some way or another, we all need some form of recognition or a pat on the back. And I was never very good at patting myself on the back. I am now, but then I wasn't. But then I didn't really know what I was doing. It was I was a lost soul. I was doing something because I was good at it. And thank God there was no social media then. You know, you don't qualify for these things if you can't. It's not a raffle. You know, you hear people criticise. People are criticised for everything. You know, footballers, if they have a bad game for England. You know, how'd you get? You know, what do you think? They just sort of won a lottery ticket to get a game. You know, life's not like that. You haven't walked into your job because someone go, oh, do you want to interview Chris today?
To be honest, I've been pretty lucky, mate. But you're right, at the top end of sport, it's a meritocracy. And to be, you know, at that level, you've got to be in the top 1% of the top 1%. And just getting there in itself is an achievement, but that doesn't feel like it when you get knocked out in round one and only win one leg.
Yeah, exactly. But there's been loads of players that, you know, have never gone on to be world champion, but without us, like me, and hundreds of other players, there'd be no sport, would there? If everybody sort of quit at their first go because they didn't win, and even you know what, I'm like mad for numbers and stats, and even back then I used to record my practices, like write them down, and then I'd write all the numbers down because averages weren't done then. You know, it was done a couple of days afterwards because they had to work it out, typical BDO. But I used to do it myself, and I go, well, I can do that. Like, even as good as Eric and Lowy and Keith and Jockey, and I can do that. There was one exception to the rule, Phil. I was like, I can't do that. You know, I can't do that.
Right, let's talk about Mr. Taylor, shall we? I mean, you have had let's say some moments with the most successful player, the greatest...
GOAT.
The GOAT, the greatest of all time. I mean, you were there when he hit the first live 9 darter at the match play. You've had some fallouts with him. Which are the ones that stick in your head the most, mate?
Everybody thinks like we had, we're enemies, or we certainly weren't rivals because I wasn't good enough.
Well, not many were.
No, yeah. But yeah, what an amazing player. And I used to drive. At the time Bob Anderson lived in Swindon, I lived in Bristol, and Phil was up in the Cricketers in Stoke. So Monday would usually be with Bob, and then Tuesday and Wednesday I'd drive from Bristol to Stoke. This is terrible. This behaviour is outrageous. Sit in the car at 9 o'clock in the morning, drink 4 cans of cider, knock on the door at 10 o'clock, and Phil would open the door to the Cricketers in a pair of slippers and a mug of tea. All right, me duck. And I go, oh God. All right, pal. And then we'd practice. Well, he would. And literally, he would go, are you coming back tomorrow? And I go, yep. And I did that for ages and ages. And then on a Thursday, I'd go back down, and me and Bob would practice, which was far more enjoyable. At least I used to win some games. And he was so generous with his time and his advice. And he did the same with AD, of course. And other players, Darren Webster. He was never, it wasn't like his success wasn't a secret. He was the most dedicated, the most hardworking, the most disciplined. We go to tournaments, I'd be rolling or crawling in, hotels at 4 and 5 in the morning out of my brains. Phil had already been in bed for 7 hours by then. He was a winning machine, and it wasn't by chance. He wasn't born with this gift, or, because I remember reading up on Phil in the, around 86, 87, his county averages were okay. He wasn't doing anything unbelievable back then. Wasn't it really till he won in Canada that we sort of went, ooh. And then like the 28s became 30s, and the 30s became 33s, and then 35s, and you're like, whoa. And I was mad for numbers, and I'm thinking, is he using 4 darts or something, this fella? What's going on here? It's like, but yeah, we were great pals, and we fell out because of my jealousy and my resentment and my frustration that I sort of knew, well, I had my opportunity, obviously the split in the darts and everything else. So by the time I played my first PDC, I was one of those that was quite fortunate. I was playing both at the same time.
Yeah.
And although Phil had obviously won the titles a couple of times by then, I didn't look at him as I looked at him towards the mid to late 90s, where he became just unplayable. Literally, in sport, some, and it don't matter who was around at the time. They, whether it be Davis in snooker, Hendry, and then O'Sullivan. Like Eric was pretty unplayable in his. Although Eric's window was very short, it only lasted 4 or 5 years. Schumacher in F1, you just couldn't. They didn't really have any rivals. And then I just became. When I went through the phase of 98 to 2001, that was a bad year. Semis of the World Masters, 2 up, 2 sets up, 1 leg up, miss a double, lose the match. Semis of the World Match Play, absolutely dominating Ronnie Baxter, blow it, and then losing to Barney in the semis of Embassy, and then the following year losing in the semis 2-0 up, 4-2 up. That was like car crash stuff.
So that period there, sort of 99, 2000, back-to-back late-side semis, various other, and you'd picked up some titles here and there. I think it was the Irish Masters on the telly.
Yeah, people say, "Oh, you haven't on a TV." Oh, I'm glad you put that in there.
It was on the telly. It was on the telly.
It was live on the radio and on telly.
There you go.
And the cream of the PDC were in it.
Do you feel that was when you were at your peak?
Yeah.
It was also probably the most chaotic period of your life.
Yeah, my mental health then was absolutely off the chart.
How did you manage to play the best stuff of your career?
I don't know.
While everything was seemingly falling apart?
Don't know.
I mean, just describe your life at that time.
A drug addiction, self-medication, depression, like beyond, to a degree that unless I was absolutely close to being out of my brains, I couldn't leave the safety of a hotel room or my house. People with depression mask things very well. People with addiction mask things very well because you learn to quite quickly, because the last thing you want when you suffer from depression is to be alienated. You need a cuddle. You need some kind of reassurance, and it just wasn't there, and it was you know when you get that fear something's going to go wrong, something's going to you just get that gut feeling, and ultimately it did, and then that was pretty much not the end of my career, because in a roundabout way it saved my life, even though what happened shouldn't have happened.
Well, let's talk about it. So you've had that spell where you've won titles, you've been making semi-finals of the World Championship.
Don't get the final of the World Pairs.
That's it, and that as well. But you get mixed up in this dispute with people you know.
Don't know.
And don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, if somebody looks at your record, they think, "Oh, you're a burglar." But it was a aggravated burglary. Is that the particular term?
Yeah. If you cross the threshold of someone else's property and you're not invited, it's classed as aggravated burglary, and it carries a minimum sentence of 3 years, bizarrely. But carrying a knife around doesn't. I'm not going to go massively in depth because it's pointless, because people just. They figure out, they actually believe that maybe Freddie Starr ate someone's hamster and someone got abducted by aliens, because it's in the newspapers. It must be true, or on Wikipedia.
But I am interested in what it was like for you going through that period and what effect it had on you.
Yeah, you're stood there and you get a 3-year prison term, and you've literally sold all your businesses, everything by this time, my life was chaotic but successful.
What was that first night in prison like? Because let's be honest, you've spent your young adult life working on the doors in Bristol. You've been in scarier situations than I've ever been in my life. You've been getting into fight, but going into prison, and some of these were serious prisons you were going to.
Yeah. The first one was the second day I was in there. There was a riot and they set fire to the jail, and I was locked in my cell. And then we got shipped out, and I was moved around. The judge wasn't particularly happy I got found guilty, and he recommended that I was Cat D straight away, which is effectively a semi-open, a pointless place. But it's where long-term prisoners tend to do, or famous people tend to do their sentence. This is brilliant. We might as well do this now. I was shipped out from there straight to Cat D, and you could work across the road in the gardens. It was in an industrial estate. Very clever idea. They didn't just supply all the fruit and veg for that jail. They went to all the prisons. It was a massive sort of process of where the inmates would grow and nurture and take care of the fruit and vegetable over there. But you could quite freely just walk into the industrial estate. So I've been in a few months by now, and I had a bit of a run-in with one of the officers in the jail, He just started monitoring my phone calls. And of course, after a while in there, so I wanted to meet up with Lorna, and so she drove. It was visiting day anyway, and he knew. And this is how horrible it can get. So he must think, right, sweet. So we got all times right. I'll be over there at 9. You come at 10. As long as we're back by, I only needed a minute. I said, as long as we're back by 9:30. I said, no one to know. We've gone, and everybody was doing it. Literally, everybody was doing it. So I jumps in the motor, surrounded by police. Of course, then you're regarded as a prisoner that's trying to escape. So you get cat aid.
So where was it after that?
Isle of Wight, and that was 23-hour-a-day bang up. That was
with some serious people,
proper criminals. Not like in Ford. It was they were what's the name of fraudsters and that kind of thing. They weren't like, this sounds terrible. People are gonna hate me, but they weren't bad criminals.
Yeah, but they're scary people and dangerous people. But then what was that like, and what did it do to you? Did it have a lasting effect on you?
Yeah. For some people, you either embrace it and make sure it never happens again, or you just become a career criminal. Because if you can handle it and it's okay, and it is in a way, it's very structured again. There's no deviation, and for me that was the perfect environment for me to eventually address a lot of issues. And fair play, the help available in there is second to none, whether you're a drug addict or you have no education, or they cater for it incredibly. And I met an incredible man called Dickie Knox, who played darts for the Isle of Wight and was involved in the county and everything over there. And he was a prison officer in the jail I was in, and saved my life and saved my career.
In what way?
He was like a father, but a good one that didn't judge and gave me confidence to go. Because obviously I thought then, that's it. I'm done. I was like, I just might as well kill myself, because everybody's going to believe all this that was in the newspapers, and where do I go? What's the point? What was the point for me? I'm never gonna get another chance. And you just sort of think, right, you plan the whole process, how, when, write a note, and then you just sort of think.
You got that far?
Oh yeah. And loads of it happened in there as well. I actually had a job in there on the unit where suicide attempts were held, like in a hospital unit. But I had the job of cleaning up the cells, because no one really wanted to do that. And I didn't mind it. It didn't really faze me at all. And of course, I'm going, all right, that's how we done it.
I'm just giving you ideas.
Yeah, so it was just sort of
so
like...
What brought you back from the brink?
Dickie Knox. He was an officer in there and absolutely loved me. And didn't mind telling me he loved me as a player. He used to love watching me, and he would sit me down, and he knew. And he went, you ain't going to do it. He won't let you. He said, you'll come back. And then there was old schoolrooms in there that were no longer used, and I had a knock on my cell door one afternoon, and the work screw was there. He went, oi mate, come with me. And he had a dartboard in his hand, an hockey and a light. What's going on here? We fucking go through these doors in the prison, and then we get this empty old room, nothing in it, big thick walls as you imagine, and you have tape measure and a pencil. You're right. Show me how you want it done. And that was it. We had a light up, and then every day, when everybody got locked down, I was in there for 2-3 hours at a time, and then because I was. I kept my nose clean and did everything that was expected of me. I then got shipped out back into another Cat D, and I met Officer Bobbitt, who was the prison governor, and they were turning this old building into a works mess for the officers, and I got wind of how much it was going to cost. So I went down and see him. I said, oh, I can do this for you. He went, what? He said, yeah, I can do this for you. I reckon I can do it for about 25 grand. And the price that they'd been given was like 70 odd. He went, what do you mean? I said, I know a sparky, I know a plumber, I'm a plasterer, I know someone who can do the false ceiling, and there's painters. I said, you've got every tradesman in here. I said, all right, well, what do you want? And by then, it was like the last 5 months of my sentence. So I was allowed out once a month for a day, which was pleasant. I said, this is mad. So I said, I want 40 quid a week. I want to go out every week. I want a dartboard, and I want a sandwich toaster. You know when you get a rider now, and you get, that's like you saying to me, Mace, I want to do this podcast there, and I go, yeah, right, I want 40 black wine gums. Yeah, and he went, you're mad. I went,
you mean a Breville?
Yeah, a Breville. That's what it was, a Breville, right? Oh, and I said, I'm not doing roll call, because normally you have to be backing yourself with the count and everything else. And we eventually negotiated it, and I did it, and I was doing it for about a month. And where this part of the prison, there used to be a guy that basically we're in this building. So you got to imagine everything that goes out of the jail in terms for repairs and everything else got to be counted and counted back in. He was a lovely guy, and I didn't know, but he suffered from epilepsy. So I was walking back to the jail, and I found him on the floor, and he swallowed his tongue having an epileptic fit. So I put my finger in his, just stuff I'd seen on TV. I'd never done none of that kind of stuff. And then like pulled his tongue out, put him in the recovery position, made sure his airways were all clear, and then ran to tell someone to ring an ambulance. And the ambulance turned up and they said, oh, you saved his life. And I was given this, like, presented with this like award for, you know, most prisoners would just, you know, but I loved him. He was a great guy. He used to give me fags and cakes, so that's why I liked him. And then from that then on, I was treated totally differently, and then they had local MPs come for the day of when this job I did was completed, and it was, I was chatting to all these. It was great. I had food and that. I didn't drink, obviously, because I wasn't allowed. I had one before I went, and I did literally, and I was chatting to all these MPs, and they went, well, and I can't believe they never thought about it before, and I'm like, well, the prisoners are Cat D, so obviously they can be trusted. You know, they're the least fearful type prisoners you can have, effectively, because the process of becoming a Cat D prisoner takes forever. You know, you got to do. It's
about rehabilitation, is it?
Yeah,
and getting them back ready for society.
You got to do drug tests every week, which was quite funny when they brought drug testing in darts, and I literally got out of prison and then almost straight away qualified for a tournament. They did drug testing, random apparently. God bless your soul, Tommy Cox. And they come up and they went, "Oh right, yeah, mate." And I did it all, and he went, "Oh right." And the drug tester was like, "What's going on here?" I said, "Mate, I've just done this every day for like 14 months, every week for 14 months. I know it works."
That return to darts, then you get out of prison, and
ironically, my first tournament I played in was next to the jail on the Isle of Sheppey.
Was it really?
Yeah. Next, I lost. I think Alex Roy won it. Alex Roy beat me in the quarters. But of course, so the last 6 months of my sentence, I was overseeing this job, and I had a dartboard in there. I had a dartboard in my cell. So when like that whole thing with Dickie gave me, and of course the whole process, I became clean. I was getting help with my mental health, and so it's a make or break situation.
So do you think that experience, as awful as it was, and it's one that you very nearly didn't come through at all, is actually what did get you on the straight and narrow?
100%. And it wasn't scary. Some parts of it were. And I know it's a cliche, but that whole wake-up call thing, it was devastating. I'd lost everything. Everything that I'd somehow, by hook or by crook or by luck, from the outside, I had the perfect life. But internally, I was a mess. And I shouldn't have even been there. And the only reason I was there, and for what created me to end up in prison, was as someone else letting me down, because I shouldn't even have been there. I didn't know anybody involved.
You've mentioned, with the mental health issues that you've had, and you talked about routine and discipline, and your gym work and everything like that. Darts, in many ways, while you've worked incredibly hard and it gave you some amazing moments, in many ways, was it perhaps one of the worst environments you could be in?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah, because alcohol was my enemy. It was my nemesis, because alcohol, of course, is a depressant. And anybody who understands addiction and mental health, we don't do things by half measures. I can't open a packet of biscuits and eat one and then eat one tomorrow. I open a packet of biscuits, I eat a lot, so I don't buy them. And that's how my life had to become. And that's pretty much how it did become when I got out. I had my moments where I relapsed, and but what the experience of that gave me was how to deal with situations and manage them, because if I didn't cope, I'd be dead.
Yeah.
So I knew, right, I've got to.
Tools like CBT, that's something you've come to. That's
Yeah.
Big help for you,
Cognitive behavioral therapy is just remarkable. It saved my life, and I did that. I actually did that when I came out, and I did it twice, because people find God or whatever. Yeah, I found that to be. It made me more rational. It made me understand that I'm not mental, I'm different.
Do you think that you were the same? I mean, you weren't the same person. You'd figured out, and you changed for the better. Do you think you were the same player when you came out, or do you think your peak had passed?
I'd continued to win tournaments, and got myself up to number 11 in the world before they changed the rankings. Before they went from a 1 year to a 2 year. And there was talk of me going in the Premier League. That would have been, not sure how that would have worked out. My God. But yeah, there was discussions of me being in the Premier League. I think I'd lost. I think naivety is a beautiful thing sometimes. If you're not damaged goods, then you've always got a chance. But by the time my sort of second coming, I was so damaged. I was mentally broke. The game had broke me. Life had broke me. Addiction had broke me. Mental health had broke me. But in a way, nobody could hurt me. I've never been scared of a human being in my life. So I then went into it. It was eyes wide shut, and now this version of Mason was eyes wide open. And of course, I was mentally a little bit more stable. My addiction was under complete control. And I'd taken that whole routine ethic of being inside to darts. You know, I was a bit more disciplined. I would go to bed now, where before, you know, I just wouldn't go to bed. I'm terrible for doing it. And I had a great 7-8 years. I went deep in some tournaments. I had a great UK Open where I'd eventually played Taylor in the quarters. I had a couple of great runs at the match play. And then became on the wrong end of the person to lose to the oldest man ever to win a game at the World Championships in John McGowan.
The end of your professional career. Do you remember the first time you met me?
No.
It was that night.
Wow.
John McGowan. It was my first World Championship. I was covering it for radio. No, not at all. But I've never mentioned this to you because it was. I remember you coming in because one of the things that I would do, I'd interview people who lost as well. Normally, they only interview the winners on the telly, but because I was doing it for the radio, going to local radio stations, interview those who lost, and I'd never met you before, and you came through. And having lost to John McGowan, you were in bits. And I remember Dave Allen was there, and you were just saying, "I can't do it anymore."
No.
Dave. Was that a realization on that night, or was that the culmination of several months or even?
Yeah, I around what year was that? 2010ish.
2009.
2009. Yeah, I'd had a tough few months, relapse. Yeah, I was in a bad way, and I was just, it was a something I had to give, and the environment was no longer healthy for me because I was getting more and more bitter, and more volatile, and more dangerous, and I thought, right, just walk now. Just walk away while you still can. And of course, by then I was doing a lot of media stuff, and the people in the media had known me for years because that had started in the 90s. That stuff, and they could sense that, you know, I was not in a good place. And then at the end of that, I actually went into therapy for 2 months. Just disappeared, and then I just made the decision, and they made the decision and said, look, you cannot put yourself in that environment anymore. And I just thought, I agree, and that was it.
So was it a relatively easy decision for you to go, you know what? Because you were still up there in the rankings.
I was in the top 30 in the world when I quit.
So I mean, it was still a viable option, but viable option in terms of the standard you were playing, but not a viable option personally.
Mentally. No. And we've seen a lot. We've seen it not just, you know, obviously in all sports. You see that. You see that because it is a horrible... I mean, it's the greatest thing ever to do something you love. You know, what's the saying? If you love your job, you never work a day in your life. And I loved playing darts. And I still love playing darts.
Yeah, you still play now.
Yeah.
Do you look back at those times and think, I would have loved another year or two? Or did you just think it had run its course?
Yeah, I think just experience and time gives you have so much more knowledge, and I don't know that person. You know, I don't know him anymore. He's dead, but he lives on. And I love this sport more than anybody. It has given me heartache, joy, friendships that have lasted 30 years, watching now that we have this next generation of players. I remember when they were kids, you know, and I'm like that, you know, I'm like proud of them. You know, they don't know it because they don't know me well enough to know it, but, you know, I know what someone like Nathan Aspinall's been through, and to watch him fills me with huge pride. Watching Michael now having to really, you know, I watched him look like he was going to be unbelievable at 17 and then have that awful crash, and I watched him sad and cry, and then I watched him dominate darts and be, you know, now regarded as, if not the best player in the world, he's in the top 2 ever. And then watching him show some guts. He's a, you know, we didn't have a choice to walk away because we weren't, you know, we'd have had to do another job. Michael's has been so good and so successful. He doesn't need to put himself through the ringer anymore, but he does.
It's all about stories, isn't it? It's all about highs and lows, and you picked
That's
out a
life.
couple there. And, you know, the likes of Rob Cross, this incredible fairy tale.
Yep.
You know, that's the beauty of sport in general. You've had more highs and lows than most, mate. So I remember reading Sid Waddell's book, and he was talking about Taylor and Bristow and all this lot, and then said, but this guy we thought we could shake everything up, who had this talent, who had this confidence. He was like a new Bristow walking in. It was Chris Mason. And it didn't quite turn out as we thought.
Oh, the ability was there. The ability was there. You know, like I said, darts doesn't lie. But to win or be a winner in that environment, you have to have a different kind of makeup. You have to be built different. You have to be programmed different. You know, like I said, it wasn't by chance Phil Taylor won 16 world titles and 16 match plays. I just didn't have that, or I was scared to be that dedicated. I don't know. I've been reading a lot lately about psychology and everything else, and I think my mask was to behave the way I did because then I had an excuse. Where if I'd have done it all right, I'd have had no excuse. But the ability was there. I was a special player. I know, and even my numbers now that I look back on, they still stack up.
What are the moments you look back on with most pride? I mean, is it, you know, even ultimately, it's 2 defeats in the semi-finals of Lakeside, but there were 180 records 2 years running.
I was favourite to be a world champion once. How many people can say that? Playing for England was incredibly. The emotion of pulling on an England shirt, even though it's only darts. I know. I mean, I'm probably more special.
There's no such thing as only darts.
Yeah, only darts. But no, I just imagine people. It's only darts. But again, it's only a tiny percentage of players ever get the chance to play for your country. Playing a very young Adrian Lewis was fascinating at the UK Open at Bolton. I averaged 112.52. And he averaged like 106 or 107. It was bonkers. But I was like the old boy then, and this was this like 18, 19-year-old lad that had so much talent. And we became, you know, fighters fight, and they become best friends, you know, Gatty and Ward and things like that. Me and Adrian that day just had this little bond. He must have thought, my God, he can play, you know, where the youngsters don't sort of know. Now you can't get away from it because numbers are everything. Back then we didn't really care too much about numbers. We cared about trophies. But yeah, I have no regrets. I have no regret because it wouldn't have been. There's no point. It wouldn't have been me anyway if I had any regrets. You know, yeah, I can look back and maybe I should have gone to bed sometimes. But you can't help whatever your personality is, whatever your traits are. Yeah, it was great fun. What a blast! Now I feel like I'm living another life. It's amazing. I get to work in the sport I absolutely adore, with people I absolutely adore. I see people and they're pleased to see me, which is nice.
Certainly a change from a few years ago.
Yeah, they don't sort of go, oh no. Yeah, I'm absolutely living the dream. I can't. Yeah, I'm just so fortunate and so grateful, and hope and try now to use my experience as knowledge and pass it on, and hopefully if I can just help one person along the way, my job's done.
well, I'm not sure whether this is version 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or whatever it is of Chris Mason, but it's been brilliant to talk to you. Thank you very much.
And
mate.
you, Dan.